Could one supplement hold the key to better attention and focus? Well, here's what you need to know about magnesium L-threonate. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Roseann, and we are talking about just this incredible form of magnesium, the most researched one in terms of there's only a couple that cross the blood-brain barrier, which means gets directly into the brain, and why you need to know about it. We're going to talk about the science behind L-threonate and the benefits. So let's jump in. So, as I said, this is the only form that is highly researched. There's one other form, not a lot of research, but it crosses right into the brain. And that means that it impacts your brain almost immediately, right? And how does it do this? So there's some science behind that. So number one, magnesium levels increase in the cerebral spinal fluid, right? And that's essential for optimal brain functioning, right? So sometimes people get freaked out because the L-threonate is so effective, right? So we all need magnesium. There are multiple forms. They all do different things. I am talking about L-threonate because it is in my multi-mag brain formula, my neurotastic, along with L-glycinate and malate, because these are the most researched forms for brain health, right? And if you're here, you probably have a child who's wired uniquely, maybe struggling with mental health. And there's just a lot of really good research about L-threonate for mental health, which we're going to dive into, right? So let's talk about the science, right? So traditional magnesium, right? The big one that maybe begins with a C, that has a limited effect on getting directly into the brain, but L-threonate actually targets this, right? So it's boosting brain magnesium levels because it can get right in there, right? It also promotes neurotransmitter balance, because when that happens, when it comes to attention, right, what does that look like? It means that there's going to be less hyperactivity and more focus. And when you're focused, you're going to not miss directions as much. You're going to be more with it. You're not going to see as much startle and reactivity. A lot of kids are emotionally reactive because they startle a lot because they're understimulated and they're zoning out, right? L-threonate also improves what we call synaptic plasticity, right? And these type of synaptic connections are critical for learning, memory, and cognitive flexibility. And so a lot of times, I know when people take our multi-mag brain formula, and if you're interested, you can go to drroseann.com/magnesium and you can learn all about it. There's a white paper. And if you sign up for subscribe and save, you get a nice discount. So, they're using L-threonate, which is so different from, citrate and other forms, because again, it's going right to the brain. People will report improved impulse control, improved processing. We're going to talk about some of the other benefits that I love to talk about it. So the other thing that L-threonate does, and by the way, L-threonate is not commonly in most products. Anybody know why? This is really expensive. It's 9 times more expensive than glycinate. Both of mine are in here, and glycinate's a lot more expensive than, some of these cheaper forms of magnesium. All beneficial to some degree, but if you're really looking to improve attention, anxiety, mood, that's what L-threonate does. There's also have to go through a regulatory body, and there is somebody who licenses it, Magteen, and there's only a limited number of licensees. So most people aren't going to want to put that in their magnesium because one, they can only work with certain providers, a limited number of licensees. And again, it's 9 times more expensive. So your people who are making products, including me, have almost very minimal profit margins. But what this is about is this is something that you can use and have a great quick win for long-term improvement. Okay. So I know we need quick wins. I get that. So don't think psych meds are the answer, because they are not. If you have magnesium deficiency, which most people do, 70% of Americans do, that psych med's not going to help you. Bing, bang, boom. You just had a connection. I love that aha moment. So it supports long-term potentiation, or what we call LTP, by, and this is a process by which the brain strengthens its connections in order to retain information. And when we have neurodivergent brains, anxious brains, right, what happens is the neural networks don't work efficiently. Sometimes they can be overactivated, sometimes they can be underactivated, and L-threonate will smooth it out, which is great. And so you'll see more than just learning, right? Those connections help you to respond better, be less reactive, use more emotional language instead of reactive language, and hopefully ward off these big explosions, reactivity patterns, right, between parents and kids or kids within themselves. Okay, so L-threonate offers neuroprotection. So it acts as a buffer against neuroinflammation, right? And neuroinflammation is probably the greatest threat that you have never heard of. Maybe you are because you're listening, for mental health. It is just occurring at an alarming rate. When I do those QEEG brain maps, I almost never have somebody who doesn't have significant neuroinflammation. I'm talking young children. Children have more neuroinflammation than adults. Their level of exposure to toxins and infections and stress is just different. I mean, we all know that, right? We can see the differences. So when we protect against neuroinflammation, what happens? Better attention, better cognitive functioning, and it protects the cells from what we call oxidative stress. And oxidative stress is linked in the research to ADHD, anxiety, and a bunch of other things. So those are all the actual science behind L-threonate. And again, what's so different about it is it really is the only type of magnesium other than one other kind that has very little research. It's newer and not in products yet, or I don't believe it is. So I don't want to say that's not true. That it crosses that blood-brain barrier, which means it gets directly into the brain and starts working immediately. Love it. Love me my magnesium. So let's talk about the benefits of L-threonate. Number one, improving attention and focus, right? So it regulates brain activity, balances out neurotransmitters, and calming both the excitatory and inhibitory neurotransmitters. And it's going to calm hyperactivity in a lot of kids. Now, just because you're calming somebody's nervous system and you're calming hyperactivity doesn't mean your kid knows what to do. You got to layer in occupational therapy, physical therapy, psychotherapy, some therapy, because if your kid's not paying attention, all of a sudden we're regulating the nervous system. What's different, right? And this is the same with pills. You have to teach skills, not pills, okay? And it also regulates dopamine and other neurotransmitters. And that's why attention starts getting better. And that's important too, right? Okay, it enhances memory and learning. So because it boosts the working memory ability, right? Your ability to retain new information and learn new information is much improved. And this is not just beneficial for kids with attention problems. This is beneficial from anybody with a mental health issue interfering with learning. And hello, as a mama of a dyslexic married into a dyslexic family, it really, really helps my kids with learning disabilities, because it smooths things out. It helps the brain to be more regulated. They can be more present in learning. But again, it's actually helping the part of that brain, that working memory, that is sometimes really hard to get to. And L-threonate can do that, right? So it decreases anxiety and stress. It calms those overactive pathways. When I do those brain maps, my God, most nervous systems are jacked up. You can see this hyperbrain communication. And that this magnesium L-threonate is just one of the quickest ways, right? Because it goes directly into the brain, and you can see how powerful it is. You can see that different forms have different outcomes. And even just because L-threonate's in yours, doesn't even mean it's the right clinical level, the potency. So mine has high level potency, based on research, right? And RDA recommendations. And just so everyone knows, we spent all this time designing this scooper so that it could be used for kids 4 and up to adults. So half a scoop is for kids 4 to 8. Then it goes to a full scoop, and then it goes to 2 scoop. We'll talk about dosing, but it's a big deal to have the clinical levels, or you're going to say, I tried that and it didn't do anything. So You might have already tried one with L-threonate and you didn't feel like it made a difference, or most likely you never even tried this because, again, it's not commonly in because it's so expensive and it's hard for companies, particularly like individual people, to get a license, right? Okay. What another benefit? Sleep. This is the main reason why Dr. Rowe takes her magnesium is sleep. Okay. Sleep has not always been my friend. I am the daughter of Tony. He sleeps like a baby anywhere. God, I'm so jealous. I'm not a jealous person. I'm jealous of people who can sleep. But I have a very overactive mind and I need to have a very tight sleep hygiene and this is part of it. L-threonate activates the parasympathetic nervous system, so it's pulling you into that relaxed state. And on top of it, you're going to have better attention, mood, and learning. So that means your nervous system all day is moving into that parasympathetic state. And then it's just easier to sleep at night, right? It addresses neurodivergent needs. So, right, that's another huge benefit of L-threonate because we know that, kids with ADHD, autism, learning disabilities, they're often more deficient in magnesium than a neurotypical. And why? Because they're always in an activated state, right? And so their body is just drawing and drawing. So magnesium is the number one most used nutrient. At a minimum, it's used in 300 processes in the body every day. Up to 600 processes require it as a cofactor, which means it's a helper. So if you're low in magnesium, 3 to 600 chemical processes in the body cannot work properly. That is why magnesium is an essential. It's really important. And that's also why when you're highly stressed, so you have and maybe you have a kid with autism, how certain kids have sensory issues and just their body is more reactive. So they're going to be using more of this. It also combats brain fog. It really can help your brain to be more clear. And if there's one thing about brain fog, which I've only really been prone to when I'm sick, everything seems to take a lot longer. And so that's stressful too. I have no patience. And so if something isn't like boom, 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 when it comes to learning and processing, you get a little activated. So if you're constantly in a brain fog state, again, you're using up a lot. And obviously, it improves emotional regulation. Anytime you're going into a parasympathetic state, you can be more available to deal with whatever stressors are coming your way. And so it's really critical. So let's talk about dosage tips. I already, talked to you a little bit about mine. Number one, you always want to talk to your provider. Your provider, hopefully now you need a holistic provider, but even most traditional allopathics are going to be supportive of magnesium. It's so evidence-based. And again, it's the number one most used nutrient in the body. And so you'd have to be living under a rock as a medical professional, not to know that, right? They might poo-poo you and say your kid doesn't need it. So there's very few supplements I put my kids on. Certainly magnesium is one of those. Vitamin D. My kids, I also really like a digestive enzyme. That's a whole other story because my kids eat a lot and they eat a lot of protein. So I want to make sure they're digesting it. You want to make sure you're following manufacturer recommendations for whatever product you have. And hopefully you have a provider that you can check in with about those recommendations. And you want to start slow and low, right? Whether it's mine or another one. If you're using some of the other forms of magnesium, right? So glycinate and L-threonate have the least gastrointestinal symptoms. Other forms of magnesium can loosen the bowels. And so you want to really be careful, right? Now, how I recommend magnesium, right, is that I really do recommend it. It's a parasympathetic support, right? It's really activating that beautiful parasympathetic state, which I call the hot tub state. You really do want to take this at night, right? I think that's the best time. Now, however, I have lots and lots and lots of people who do quarter, half dose, or another full dose at some other time during the day. I would say the second most common time is like right after school so that they start calming them and getting them ready. I also have people who take it in the morning who struggle with anxiety or OCD. So you want to think about what's best for you and your child, and you want to have an aligned provider. And again, always follow the manufacturing recommendations. I hope this has just opened your mind about how L-threonate is just completely different. It is so effective. I mean, what we designed is designed to be very effective and potent. And our neurotastic multi-mag brain formula is flavorless. It is sweetened with monk fruit, so there is a gentle sweetness to it. I really wanted organic monk fruit, but you can hide it in things. You asked for it to be flavorless, so we made it flavorless because I get it. We have a lot of restrictive eaters, but you can add it to juice, you can add it to yogurt, you can add it to oatmeal, you can, put it in a lot of different types of foods. People often put it in smoothies. You also can just straight take it. So whatever works for you. If you want to know more about our multi-mag brain formula, you can go to drroseann.com/magnesium. And I'm super proud of this product, and you can learn more by listening to the other episodes. But it's an easy, quick win to calm the nervous system with consistent use can lead to long-term change.